In terms of bravery, I'd like to ask you, is there a moment that stands out in your life as your bravest?
Yes, definitely. As Mary mentioned, I had a very unusual upbringing with an alternative Christian lifestyle. If you imagine the television programmes where there's Americans who have got their hands in the air and people are falling over and they're speaking in funny languages and they're talking about angels and demons, I was brought up in a church like that in Liverpool, which is very unusual, and lots of people are quite shocked that they exist, but there's quite a lot of them out there. And I was very much indoctrinated into this cult, and I will use that C word. It affected every part of our lives, what we spent our money on, who we could hang around with, who you could marry, the job that you did. Literally everything you did, they had a say and they had an impact. And the story, I'm not giving too many spoilers here, but the story that I'm writing in my memoir is of this very brave moment when I left all that behind. I won't tell you why I left it all behind, that's in the book. But it was a huge thing. I'm very brave because my whole friendship group was in the church. Everything I knew was in the church. I was in my 30s, so I'd been living this lifestyle for a very, very, very long time. So to actually leave that and to turn my back on it was quite a huge thing, but also one of, I think, the best thing I've ever done in my life, but very much the scariest and bravest, because I think they're hand in hand.
Yeah. And I suppose, did you know how big a thing it was you were doing in the moment of it?
Yes, I agonised for weeks and months because I knew I didn't want to go anymore. I knew there had to be a parting of the ways, but I knew not only would I lose my friendship group, I knew it would impact my parents because they still went and they were still very involved. So I knew it was going to change my life forever. But I also knew I didn't want to stay because my whole life I'd been thinking, I don't really believe this, but I've been told I should, so I do, and I went along with it, and against my better judgment, stayed in the church. So although it was all I'd ever known, I had seen glimpses into normal life and thought, oh, I quite like the look of that, thank you very much. But the actual step of, jumping out was huge. It was huge. But yeah, Mary knows me very well. There were a lot of lists that went on with pros and cons, obviously. But yeah, I know I made the right choice. I know I made the right choice.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you reach a tipping point. It sounds very similar to almost coming out in a way.
Yes,
because
definitely.
You know that it gets to a point where you can't live that way anymore, but you know potentially what a huge impact it's going to have on you and everyone else around you, but you can't not do it.
Yes, that's how it felt. It felt like I was going to explode.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I know there's a lot of connection between mind and body. At that time, I had all sorts of stomach problems, which ended up with me having a hiatus hernia, and I'm like, it's called stress and anxiety because I knew I had to make this really big decision. But my whole life I'd been living a double life. I'd been following the Christian way I'd been taught, but in my head I was thinking, I don't agree with this, or oh, hang on a minute, there's a different way of doing that could be better, and you won't even think about it. So I lived like a double life. So I think it is very similar to coming out, and I felt like I couldn't be myself. Now I'm me, and it's amazing. That's like the result 15 or so years on of being brave. It means I can now be myself, but that's scary because for 30 something years I wasn't.
Yeah,
I was someone else.
It's a tremendous pressure to live under, isn't it, when you're keeping up that facade. I know from reading, I'm lucky enough to have been a beta reader for Maddy's book, so I'll try not to give too much away, but I know that even at school, once you started going to a mainstream school, there was differences even there. So even to have that at such a young age, 8, 9, it's awful to actually have to live under that pressure from such an early age.
Oh, definitely. So I was 5, my first day of school, and I prayed out loud at lunchtime and said thank you to God for my dinner, and everybody laughed, and I thought, oh, you can't do this. Went home, told my mum and dad. My dad said, you'll have to pray in your head from now on. So I was like, okay. Mum said, no, keep doing it out loud because then you're preaching the gospel. And I prayed in my head. But at that point, I'm like 5, however old you are when you go to school, 5. And I thought, oh, I have to be a different way at home and in church than I am at school. That's quite a huge thing to have to do and to live this double life, secret agent. So yeah, it has, and it has an impact on mental health as well as physical health.
Yeah.
So yeah, very brave but very necessary.
Yeah. Well, I think we're both recovering people pleasers, aren't we?
Yes.
And I think we know that stems from both our pasts and upbringings.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that was a big moment.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that moment then made you braver for the rest of your life? And have you got braver as you've got older, do you think?
Yes, definitely. I thought Mary kindly sent me the questions in advance, and I'd had to think about it yesterday. And definitely in myself, I've got braver and braver. If I look back, I couldn't have started my own business, which I have now. I couldn't have written a book. I couldn't have done talks in front of people. There's lots of things I do now that I'd have been far too scared to do and just wouldn't even have dreamt of. But I was thinking, as I've got older, I've got more nervous about other things, like physical things. So I now would not try going skiing because I'm now very aware of my human frailty. I don't have great balance, and I think I'd probably end up falling over and breaking something. Whereas I think if I was younger and I'd tried it, I probably would have been fine. But I've become more risk averse in a really strange way. Physically, I've become more risk averse because I know I'm getting creaky. But mentally, I feel like I'm getting braver and braver, and I scare myself in a good way on quite a regular basis.
Yeah, well, that's great. I think that's something that I think is a big part, is pushing outside your comfort zone.
Yes.
Because that's where the magic happens. I saw a great quote the other day that said, if you want the things in your life to change, you need to change the things in your life.
Oh.
And I think there's something like, we have something like 90,000 thoughts a day, and 95% of them are exactly the same as the day before or the last 30 years. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's difficult to do anything different if you don't push yourself outside that comfort zone. And it doesn't have to be a big step. We're not talking skydiving.
Yeah.
It might be going sitting in a coffee shop on your own and having a coffee, which to some people is a terrifying thought, isn't it, if they're nervous about being alone. So it's everybody's got their own comfort zone that they're pushing beyond sometimes, aren't they?
Definitely. And it always surprises me. People say to me that I'm brave. And it'll be things like, last week I stayed overnight because I was at a client's 2 days on the run, stayed overnight to avoid the traffic. So I went out for a meal on my own, sat reading my Kindle, had a few drinks, went back, had a bubble bath, absolutely loved it. The client were going, are you okay on your own? We're really worried about you. You're so brave. And I was like, no, it's really nice. I can sleep like a starfish because there's no one else in the bed. And I haven't had to sit in traffic. And I was really chilled. And I got to read my book without being interrupted. It was amazing. Yeah. And I had a really nice time. But I didn't feel brave doing it. It was convenient. But it surprised because to other people, that was a really brave thing. So as you say, there's very much a scale of what's brave for some people isn't. But there's lots of things that other people do that are really brave. Like Mary does stand up. Oh my word. No.
That is close to skydiving, I have to say.
Yeah, I think that is skydiving, but keeping your feet on the ground-ish. So yeah, I think there's scales of bravery, and I'm happy in my own comfort. I explode out of my comfort zone, but there's some places I'm not going.
Yeah, I always think with stand-up and skydiving, right up until the moment that I step on the stage, I'll make up all sorts of excuses and reasons why I shouldn't be doing it, and maybe they'll cancel it, and then I won't have to go. But then once I'm on stage, it's fine. But in that moment, and that's why I liken it to skydiving. There's probably people sat in the plane going, I can't jump, and then they do, and then they're like, whee, and it's brilliant.
Yes,
so,
yeah,
but every time, and I've noticed, obviously observing lots of other comedians at gigs, I can always see there's just this moment of like, why the hell am I doing this as a living, just before they step on stage, and then they're like, right, now I'm here. So yeah,
that's awesome. Good. I love that.
So looking forward, because obviously you've got your book coming out.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to be brave going forward. How do you see that panning out now once you release your book and start to promote it?
Yeah, definitely. because I wrote the book, and writing the book was very cathartic and healing and amazing. And as Mary said, I've had some very close friends who've beta read it and given me some feedback, but the world out there haven't read it, and there's lots of stuff in that book that's very much my innermost thoughts and things that have happened to me that people as general don't know. And every time I think about it actually being published, I feel terrified. Because I'm thinking, oh yeah, I've written it, and I'm really pleased with it. And I'm like, oh my word, people are going to read it and know about my past. And you're like, oh, okay. And it feels very exposing. But I know, because I've done other brave things, that it is a big step. But I know I'm strong enough because I've done the other brave things. I've proved to myself I can do brave. So I know I'll be okay. But yeah, there is still what am I doing? Definitely.
It's very daunting. It's that other people's reaction, isn't it?
Yes.
To it, but that's something you can't control. But
exactly, and I'm a very different person now, and I think that's one of the big things. I'm a very different person now than I was then, and if you know me now and read some of those things, I think you might be shocked, because my beliefs, to be honest, were always very different from what I was taught anyway. But I had to behave in a certain way and all these things. And I think that's the thing that scares me the most, that someone will read something and think I'm still like that. And I'm like, no, you have to look at me now. This is the new, the butterflies come well out of the chrysalis flying for England. This is the new me. This is the real me.
Yeah.
This is the me that's always been squished underneath, and can finally be released and be out there. So
yeah, that's what I must say, because obviously I've read it, and I remember I read it in stages, and I remember messaging you going, I'm so emotional.
Yeah.
And then I said I was angry, and I remember you saying, oh, I'm sorry I've made you angry. And I was like, no, that's a good thing, because you're evoking all these emotions.
Yeah.
And I think people will really respond to it. And your story is very unique, but the actual basis of it will actually relate to a lot of people, I think.
Yes.
And lots of people are in situations that they don't like, or they're fighting their instincts. So I think they'll all find comfort in the fact that eventually you found your way, and it is possible to heal from something like that.
Definitely, and to escape from control, because it was a controlling church, but obviously lots of people in controlling relationships, controlling workplaces, so many different forms of that. And that's my hope, that people read it and think, actually, if she can do it, that means anyone can, because it is brave and it is scary, but it's worth it.
Yeah, what a great message to get out there.
Thank you.